Welcome to Milton and King's On the Wall podcast, where we engage in conversations with artists, designers, and more. Today we speak with Alischa Herrmann, founding director of Bespoke Letterpress. We hope you enjoy this conversation. If you do, please subscribe and consider leaving us a rating and review. Hi, Alischa. Can you hear me?
Hi, Chris. I can. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Am I pronouncing your name right? Is it Alischa or Alischa?
Alischa.
Alischa. Okay.
Alischa.
Great. It's good to get that on the outset.
Oh, you're right. It's a funny spelling, so it confuses everyone.
Yeah, I didn't know when I saw it. I was like, Alischa. You never know, so I always just like to be sure.
Yeah, boring old Alischa, that's me.
So thanks for hanging out with me today. I appreciate you getting on.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm sorry it's taken us so long to coordinate and get everything sorted so we could actually make this happen.
Oh, life happens, doesn't it? And
it sure does.
Yeah.
It sure does. It's been hectic. Yeah,
but you've had a very, very exciting and very busy last few months for sure.
It sure has been. Yeah.
Why don't we get started by just giving a little bit of background as to where you are now and what you're up to currently. You're in Australia.
We are, yes, in the Southern Highlands.
Southern Highlands. Now, I think do I pronounce it Bowral?
Barrel. Yes.
Barrel. Okay.
Yes.
And it looks like I looked it up on a map, and it looks like it's about halfway between Sydney and Canberra. Is that right?
Correct. It's about an hour and a half-ish, roughly, from Sydney and a little bit more to Canberra. So yeah, kind of in the middle.
It looks like a beautiful small town. It reminds me a lot of Toowoomba.
Oh, it reminds me of that too. It's stunning. We feel so fortunate to live here. It's a beautiful little pocket, and I feel like we're kind of isolated a little bit away from the real world and the hectic cities, but we've kind of got everything here that we also need. So yeah, it's a beautiful spot to live and to raise a family and have a business, and yeah, we feel very fortunate that this gets to be home.
Now, you said it was the Highlands, so it's elevations like...
It is. I think it's like 670 meters above sea level, so it's quite high. So it gets very cold. But
ever snow?
It actually snowed a few weeks ago, in May, which is very unusual. We get little flutters every couple of years, but yeah, not too much heavy snow. But when it does snow, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I was reading just in the news that Australia's going through like the coldest on record or something.
It was, yeah, the coldest May we've ever had, apparently. So yes, you have to definitely dress warm when you live in the Highlands, but you get used to it. So it's beautiful. We're very fortunate to live here. We're definitely never leaving.
Yeah, Milton and King's headquarters is in Toowoomba, which if someone's not familiar that's listening, which is in Queensland, a state on the northern east side of Australia, and which is, most people think of Queensland as being really hot, or like Brisbane, very tropical. And then you go up to Toowoomba, which is just up the range, just up the hills there, and it's a completely different climate.
Yeah, it's beautiful up through there. It really is.
Yeah.
I feel like it's kind of a little bit on par with what we've got here in the Highlands. Probably not quite as cold, but at least it's not as humid, I guess, as you get in. We used to live in Brisbane, so it's not as humid as you get in Brisbane as well, up through there. So beautiful. I love that we're both regional. I think it's just a beautiful fusion, you know?
Yeah. So you used to live in Brisbane?
We did for a while, actually. My husband's a pilot, so we kind of, in our earlier years, used to move around Australia a bit, chasing airline careers and jobs for him. So we were based in Brisbane for about 5 years, which is actually where I started Bespoke, so way back then. So yeah, Brisbane was lovely. We loved living there, but I like the Highlands better.
Yeah. Did you live kind of in the city of Brisbane or in one of the outer suburbs?
We were just a little bit north of Brisbane, so... Yeah, okay. It was lovely. We loved living there. It was a great spot to be, and yeah, I really liked living in Brisbane. It was almost not the crazy intensity that Sydney is, but it's still a great city with everything a city kind of needs. So yeah, we had a good life living there.
Yeah, Brisbane's one of my favorite cities. I lived there for a little bit as well.
Do you get to come to Australia much?
Maybe once or twice a year at this point. I lived there for about 6 years. Just in Brisbane and then in Toowoomba, before moving back to the States. But yeah, no, I loved Brisbane. I loved that whole area, and always really liked it. Like you said, it's got that big city thing, but not it's much more laid back than a place like Sydney.
Yeah, yeah. I think I do much better not in crazy crowds. I feel like I've turned into my mum a little bit. She never liked being, in the hectic city, which as a kid I never understood because we lived in Sydney. But now I'm like, I completely get it. Just let me hide away from the world and all these thousands of people. Give me my space
Yeah.
to breathe. Yeah.
You said your husband was a pilot. Does he have
He
a military
is.
background?
No, no, just commercial airline. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah, so he's still a pilot. But yes, it's a busy life we live.
Does he currently fly internationally or just domestically or?
Mainly domestic. They do a little bit of international, like a bit of Bali and New Zealand and places close to Australia, but not to the other side of the world. So just
Right.
mostly domestic.
So he's not gone from home for too long.
A couple of days,
Yeah.
probably about 4 days at a time is the max,
Okay.
which is hard when you've got so many kids, but we make do.
So many kids. So how many is so many?
We've got 4 kids.
4 kids. Okay.
4 kids, yes.
And what are their ages?
9, 6, 4, and 18 months.
9, 6, 4, and 18 months. Okay, so
Yes.
you have a fairly a new arrival that's
Yes, little Louis, yes.
blessing the home.
Yes,
Little Louis.
Little Louis, yes. And I think 4 is a good place to stop. I feel like we're at our capacity now.
At capacity. Where you live now, is it are you on like a nice little plot of land there that's a lot of room for the kids and
We've got an acre of land. So
okay.
we live right in Barrel. So I guess finding smack bang in the middle of the city of Barrel, they're kind of smaller house blocks. So we're kind of slightly on the edge of Barrel with a bit of space. And, we look out to the beautiful Mount Gibraltar, which is this beautiful mountain behind us. And yeah, it's beautiful. There's lots of space for the kids, which is lovely.
That's so cool. Yeah, it's a good upbringing for them there, I would imagine.
Definitely. They don't know how lucky they are.
Yeah, not until they're older. Maybe one day they'll go back and look fondly upon their childhood
I hope so.
and all that mom and dad gave them.
Yeah, I hope so.
Well, that's cool. Is that where? So you said you started your business while you were in Brisbane, right?
Correct. Yes, back in 2007, I first started tinkering with the idea and started to learn letterpress. And then kind of 2008 was when I officially registered the business and took on our first clients and started doing the first bit of work that we did. So it feels like a lifetime ago, to tell you the truth.
So it was the current concept and everything that it is now. That what you were doing then is what it is now, essentially. Wasn't it a different business, or was it?
No, so it was bespoke letterpress, but I feel like when I first started, bespoke means to custom make, and letterpress is obviously printed on beautiful old printing presses. So when I first started the business way back then, it was purely custom making letterpress stationery. So we were doing mainly wedding invitations, and I was just, a one-man show. It was just myself doing everything, and mainly doing custom, invitations, wedding invitations was the bulk of the work, a bit of business cards and things like that. But yeah, so that was kind of where the business started, which is completely evolved and grown and changed and, had so many different variations since then to what it is now. We don't do wedding invitations anymore, but yeah, that's where it kind of started, and then organically grew and changed and morphed and developed, and went down a few different paths between now and then. But yeah, that's how it originally started.
That's so interesting. I looked up a little bit because I know very little about printing, even though I'm doing
you
a
should
wallpaper.
learn a little bit, Chris.
Yeah, even though I'm doing a wallpaper podcast, but in terms of especially what you're talking about, the old school way of printing.
Yes.
What caused you to get interested in it?
Get into it. I think so. I'm a graphic designer, and I've always been a graphic designer. And I think that prior to us moving to Brisbane, I worked in Sydney, and I was working crazily in the film industry as a graphic designer. So I was working for 20th Century Fox, which was, this is in the very early 2000s. So, it's kind of when DVDs were in their heyday, I suppose. And I was working as movies got released by 20th Century Fox, and I was working here in Australia and creating the advertising and the promotion and the marketing and the packaging materials that came out as a movie got released. And so it was just crazy. It was insane. And I feel like that was an incredible job to have as a young 20-year-old graphic designer. That was a huge responsibility.
That seems awesome.
It was pretty cool. I feel like that wouldn't exist now. I feel like it's such a different era now than what the movie industry was back then.
Poor DVDs.
I know. That that was even before like you could download movies off the internet. Like even that didn't exist. It was just a completely different world.
Yeah,
Um,
now they live in a now you only find DVDs at yard sales and
Oh,
truck stops and
I know. And I feel like I've tried to explain to the kids what I used to do, and it's like it's such the most foreign concept that they just do not fathom.
yeah.
Can't understand it. But anyway, so I was working with 20th Century Fox and based in Sydney, and they were my client, and it was insane, and their printing budgets were huge, and I feel like back in that day, so I'd be designing packaging like that would go into your supermarket and your department stores and anywhere, everywhere that was selling DVDs and the related merchandise and promotion that came out with the movie. And I think that it was quite an era where it was almost like throw every different possible printing technique at a product to make it jump out on the shelf. So we'd create a packaging design that would, be 4-color CMYK, but then it would have, like 4 or 5 different finishes and foils and metallics and like all this crazy stuff that was going on. And the
Yeah.
budgets were huge. Like it was unlimited kind of what we could put on a package to make it stand out. So it was just throwing so much money at making these insane packages and ideas and printing techniques. And it would work and they would sell. And, it was just making these huge companies even richer. And I think that was just a bit soul destroying a little bit, I suppose. And I just felt quite detached from, I was sitting all day at my desk designing something and coming up with these incredible ways of using print to make these great things that would jump out and create a tangible product. But I wasn't actually handling that tangible product. So I was literally just chained to my desk the whole time. So I think I felt quite detached from the process, I suppose. So I think I just had this yearning to kind of, I don't know, get my hands in there and just get a bit inky and, kind of be the one to come up with the idea, but then also print the idea, which it's in retrospect, it's kind of crazy. I was just like, sure, why not? I'll just teach myself letterpress printing. Why not? But yeah, that's kind of how it all came out. I think I was just commercially burnt out and, I think I needed to get off a computer and I needed to be doing something with my hands. And, I loved print and I loved design and it just seemed like this really beautiful fusion. And I don't know, it seems so corny, but it kind of just, something was telling me it's what I was supposed to be doing. And so I think that when we were moving then to Brisbane for my husband to start a new position up there with a different airline, I think it kind of gave me the permission to turn around and go, okay, well, what is it I want to do? And, how do I make this happen? And yeah, it was kind of the beginnings of everything, I suppose. So yeah, that's kind of how it started.
It's
It's,
interesting
yeah,
how you talked about how your initial experience being a graphic designer was a bit soul-sucking because even though you were designing these things, you didn't have, I guess you sort of did it and then you would forget about it and then something else would come down the assembly line, right?
pretty much, yeah. And then a couple months later, I'd just get this delivery on my desk of this incredible thing I'd designed. And there was just this disconnect from creating it on my computer to then feeling it. Months later, I was like, who made this? What was the process? Like, how did this thing go from being on my desk to now this box I'm holding in my hands?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I suppose like, I guess the question that I have is, let's say you're designing and you're creating and you go, okay, well, I want to have more of a connection with the items that I'm creating. So, I'm going to create my own stuff, whether it's,
Yeah.
like you said, wedding invitations or something like that. Why did you decide to go, like, and rather than just being like, well, I'm going to design and then get them printed, or I'm going to design and use the most modern technology. What was why was it like, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the
Oh, because I'm
1800s?
crazy, Chris. That's why.
Was it just
Because I'm
was it just a fascination like with the mechanical element
I
of
think
it?
so. I think so. And I think back then, no one was doing letterpress in Australia. Like it just did not exist. And I feel like there was a few letterpress companies that were in the States that had kind of gone through the same process that I had, was starting to be like, oh, there's this really cool machine. I'm going to learn how to use it. But there was just no one in Australia. And I feel like there was a couple of, old print shops that had been around for decades. They would have a letterpress or a Heidelberg sitting in the back corner, but they literally were doing nothing with them. Or if they were kind of die cutting and which just thumping the crap basically out of paper with them and destroying the presses. But there was just no one doing it. And I think in my mind, I'm like, something has to be a challenge to excite me to want to do it. And I feel like if it's too easy, I'll get bored and, it won't keep me enthused and motivated. So the harder it is, the more I guess I kind of thrive on the challenge of it. So yeah, and I think I'd just come across letterpress and, the machinery was beautiful. And my dad, they had a family earth moving construction business with huge machinery and trucks and all sorts of fascinating stuff. So as a child, I'd kind of grown up around machinery and grease and oil and, that kind of land. And I guess I'd kind of seen from these big, ugly machines that my dad and their business would use that create, these great things. So I don't know, I guess maybe deep down, somewhere inside of me, I kind of had this love for old not rusty, you don't want to use rusty, but, old oily machinery potentially.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so it kind of started. And then I felt like, letterpress then once we started, as the years went on, it became more common and popular, and lots of other young designers then were like, oh, I'm going to learn letterpress as well. So it kind of became a bit more of a trend. But I absolutely didn't do it for a trend, or it just didn't exist. I guess we kind of paved the way a little bit maybe for, other designers to see that's a way of them to design and produce their own work. But yeah, it was so much hard work. It was so hard, physically hard and mentally hard. And, to make these really old machines, first of all, work, so you got to restore them, but then also to try and use this old machine, which prints very slow and it's very hard, and you're printing one color at a time and one sheet at a time, and the process is incredibly slow. But to try and make a commercialized product using that technique, it was a huge learning curve that took years and years and years and years to get our formulas. And it's been a long process.
How did you or what was like the first? Let me ask this: do you still have the very first letterpress that you used?
The first printing machine, yes, we do. First printing press, yes. Charlie is his name. He's an 1893 Chandler and Price. So it's a foot treadled press. You'd pump it with your foot to make the press roll into motion. It was super old school, super old school. But yes, we've still got it. I don't use it anymore, but I've still got him. I don't think I could bring myself to part with him, because I feel like he and I went on such a journey, and he was a cranky old bastard of a press, but we got a happy medium there working together.
Okay, yeah, because I visited your website and I saw that it listed 7 different printing machines, and you gave them all names.
We did, yes.
And so you said Charlie was the first one?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I was just trying to understand like the process of like where did you find it? What did you have to do to it to get it to where it was going to be a functional thing that this is what you're going to use to start your business?
Yeah, it was a lot of trial and error, and I ended up getting it was just fate, really. I feel like that brought us together. But back when I was trying to learn how to do letterpress, and even when I was trying to find my first press, I was reading around, printing museums everywhere I could find, and anyone who I thought would have any connections to be able to buy an old printing press. And through that process, I guess word kind of got out amongst all this network of old printers that, I was really itching to learn letterpress. And I managed to find my first press by someone contacting me. They were based down in Canberra, so we still live in Sydney, and they were a bookbinder who has closing up their business. They had their business for decades and decades, and they were retiring and closing up and selling off all their equipment. And they had this old Chandler and Price sitting in the back corner that they'd not used in, like 40 years. That was sitting in the back corner. So they contacted me. So that's how I ended up getting him, the first press. But through that network of me trying to, work out how on earth I was going to do this, I ended up getting contacted by a gentleman called Bob who lived in Brisbane. And he was an old retired letterpress printer. And he had kind of heard that I was interested to learn. And I think he was really keen to share his knowledge, because I felt like he could see that it was a dying art form. He'd been... so he was a letterpress printer, but then as time went on, letterpress got phased out and offset got brought in. So he'd kind of been through that himself in a personal capacity, professional capacity in his career. But he could see that, he had all this knowledge as a letterpress printer, but he was getting a lot older, and that, he kind of felt that he wanted to share that knowledge, because once he went, and his generation went, the knowledge on how to print would be gone. So he heard that I wanted to learn and kind of took me under his wing, and together we kind of tinkered and learned, and I used to go help him in his rusty old shed learn how to restore these presses, but also how to make them work in a modern context as well. It just seems like forever ago that was happening, but that's kind of how it began. So we kind of learned together. So we fused his traditional ways with my modern design and tried to work out how we could obviously work and come up with ways of doing things, because I guess the materials that you used to have, back in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, whatever, they don't exist, those materials anymore. So to problem solve together. So that's how it all
Yeah, I was
started. So
just
wonderful Bob,
thinking,
he went on to teach quite a few other people how to print, which is amazing. So his legacy continued.
that's amazing. I was just thinking, like, restoring something old like that, it's not like you can just find parts anywhere.
No.
Like, to be able to restore something like that, just finding the parts that would work with something like that.
Yeah.
I don't even know where you would begin, or is it all just sourcing old used stuff, or is it making new things that work with this old
It's mainly trying to
machine?
source, and I feel like a lot of the old print shops that would have these printing presses sitting in the back corner, a lot of the time they'd have, old timber cabinets and type drawers and, just full of random bits of pieces that they had sitting there for years. So it would almost be like rummaging through everything that they had to try and find, the missing one thing you were trying to source. But yeah, luckily, as we went on to get more presses, I became a little bit more cluey to what we were looking for. So I made sure that when we were acquiring presses, that I was trying to find ones that were in the best possible condition.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of helped the process. If you're starting with one that's kind of missing a whole heap of stuff to start with, you're never really going to get to where you want to go. So
Yeah.
yes. Anyways, that was kind of the origins of us and letterpress, and yeah.
Looking at the printers on your website, it looks like three, the three that are from the 1800s are all U.S. made, and all the ones from the 1900s are from Germany.
Germany, yes, correct. Yes. They made
Okay.
amazing machinery, the Germans. The
Yeah.
precision's incredible. Incredible.
So what is the so you got, so I'm reading off your site here. So you got Charlie, which is the original. Then you have Edward and Werner, and then you have Polly, Ernst, Helga, and Herbie. What are the differences between these different printers? Because they seem like, if you look at Herbie, for example, which it says it's a 1973
Yes.
Heidelberg ink press,
Yeah,
the technology on that would obviously be way different than
it is. Absolutely.
yeah. So
Yes.
do you still use the old ones
No,
or
not the old ones. No. So as time
okay.
went on, and then we started to print more, and obviously the foot treaded presses are very slow. So using a Heidelberg, which is motorized, it's a quicker. Obviously, it's still slow, but it's
Yeah.
quicker than a foot treadling press. And you can just have a little bit more precision. And then kind of as time went on, so when I first started doing letterpress, and it was just me, it was all ink, everything was ink based.
Yeah.
And as time then went on, I started to really develop a love for foil printing. So which we can do on the Heidelberg presses. We purchased a foiling unit, which was like a retrofitted adaptation that we could put on the press, which then let us heat up the press to like 115, 110 degrees, which then allowed us to transfer foil onto paper. So as time went on, I really, really got a real tickling for print to be foil, and kind of merged us over time. So then we stopped using ink, and we were purely just foil printers rather than ink printers for a few different reasons. I feel like foil printing was technically harder. So I feel, for me, it has to be a challenge. If I get bored, I just get bored, and I'm not gonna want to do it. Whereas foil printing would always, mess with your mind a little bit, trying to problem solve. So I
Yeah.
enjoyed the challenge, but it was also neater and cleaner. So printing with ink on old printing presses is very messy, whereas using foil
Yeah.
would be a much cleaner process as well. So yeah, so as time went on, we started to not use ink so much and start to use foil so much, to the point that we then kind of didn't use ink at all, and we're purely just using foil, which is kind of where we've landed today.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Because I would just YouTubed some videos of these old Chandler and Price presses, and it is. I mean, like, for those listening, like, you are pushing like a pedal to make this wheel turn.
Yes,
Yeah, it's
yes.
very physical, and that, what do you call that circular plate where the ink goes? Is there a certain name for
I like the
that?
ink disc. Yeah, yeah. It is. It
Yeah.
is very physical. And back in those early days, this is like 2007, 2008, 2009, during that era, and the foot treaded press was all I had. I didn't have any Heidelbergs yet, so I used to. And you could always, you'd have to pump it with your right leg. So I
Yeah.
remember I used to spend so much of my life pumping this press that I ended up getting these huge leg muscles on just my right hand thigh. But then my left thigh became really skinny because I was so out of proportion. So I remember I used to wear
Yeah.
jeans and, it'd be so tight on my right hand thigh and then, baggy on my left hand thigh. So
How
it's an
funny.
absolute workout. Absolutely. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like I'm too old now. Like, I was in my 20s then. I could do it. But the thought of having to print like that now, it just, I don't
Did
have
you
the
find your
stamina.
Did you find yourself switching legs? Like, would you
No,
go
you
like, well,
couldn't.
now
You couldn't.
today?
No, you
Oh, you
couldn't.
couldn't.
Just the way it was, and yeah, it was just always with your right leg. So
When you were
yeah,
using those old presses, were you doing multicolor on that as well?
yeah, stupid me, I would. So you'd have to, ink it up with one color,
Yeah.
hand feed it through, pump it through with one color, clean it all down, change the color, do it all over again. So yeah, it was a lot of hard work. I feel like I learned a lot in the process, but I don't
Yeah.
want to go back to doing that. I feel like it's yeah. It
Yeah.
I was younger and fitter and yeah, had more time up my sleeve clearly back then than what I do now.
Yeah. How did you? I mean, I guess even though you have a fairly young child now, how did you sort of balance, you know, having the kids and starting a business, and how did you find time to
It
do these
was
things? And
it was tricky. I feel like when I started the business, I was 20, was I like 26, 27? We didn't have children yet.
Mhm.
So I felt like I was able to kind of do all that hard foundation work pre-children. I mean, it was still so hard having children. We've grown so much since the kids have been born. But it was hard struggle. And I feel like, so I had my first child in 2013. And by that point, we had quite a few staff members. And I think, had we opened our first store? I'm not sure if we had, or it was soon. So there was a lot happening. So I think trying to juggle, motherhood and a baby and your first baby, and he was pretty full on, but being your first baby always is. But definitely of all my four children, my first was definitely the hardest.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, it was hard, and I felt like it took a lot of balance. And I think that I've always got the mum guilt, always. Like I don't have enough time for the kids and spend enough time with them, but at the same time I've got this business and so many staff now that we're responsible and accountable for. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard to balance. It's so hard to balance. But I hope that the kids grow up and they're inspired. I hope that they can see that, even though you can have these absolutely insane, crazy ideas, that if you work really hard at them and you give it your all and you problem solve and you don't let the tough stuff get you down, that you can make great things happen. So I hope they're inspired.
Oh,
I hope so.
I'm sure they will be. I'm looking at these printers and
Yes.
thinking, before you opened your store, were you just working out of home?
So we've actually moved the studio around a few times, which is hard because they're such big machines to move around. So
Yeah.
when I first started in Brisbane, we had a Queenslander house. You lived in Brisbane, so you probably know the Queenslanders.
Yep.
The raised timber houses.
Mm-hmm.
So we had the studio under the house. So we
Okay.
lived upstairs and we put the studio in under the house. So that was at home. Then when we moved to the Southern Highlands, and I think one of our big themes as well when we were moving to the Southern Highlands, it probably took us about 2 years to find the right spot for us. We knew we wanted to be in the Highlands, we just didn't know where we wanted to buy, because we're trying to find somewhere where I could operate the business from. So
Did you
eventually,
did
oh
you
sorry,
know that
yes.
when you went there, did you know that you were going to end up opening a store, or did you just think, "Oh, I'll still just do this out
No,
of the house"?
yeah, I just thought we'd still be at the house. So we were trying to find somewhere that had a detached studio, so a separate building to the main house, because by that point
Mm-hmm.
we had staff members. So I wanted to be able to separate our home life from business life. Um, so we were looking for a property that kind of had a separate studio or a separate cottage or somewhere where we could, crane these presses into, which is a hard feat. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, run the business. So we ended up eventually finding a place we bought in Barrow, which is perfect, and it's worked out so well for us. But it had a little studio out the front and the main house at the back. So the little studio at the front was, I guess, the original cottage on the property before our house had been built.
Mm-hmm.
So we ended up running the studio out of there, but we only were in there for about, I'm going to say about 2 years before we'd absolutely had outgrown it. The business had grown too much by that point. And yeah, and then we went down the crazy I don't know if you know, we opened a cafe, which, oh my goodness, crazy. We opened a letterpress cafe here in Bowral in, when was it, 2016, I think it was. So by that point, we wanted to open a store and we were trying to find a location to have a store in Bowral and we couldn't find one. And there was this development happening, which was amazing. And we were like, that'd be great. We want to put a store in here. But the only way we could put a store, because that position in that build-in development had been designated as a cafe, so the only way we could get that site is by also opening a cafe. So we just like, yeah, why not? Let's open a letterpress cafe. Yeah, don't ever do that.
Do you still have that now?
No, we ended up selling that.
Okay.
So we sold that business it was during the pandemic. I can't remember what year it was, 2020, 21, I'm not sure. We sold it to an amazing local family who've already got a cafe. So they bought it as a second cafe, which is great because they knew how to operate a cafe, unlike us who were just, hoping for the best.
Yeah. You always, you often see cafes that'll they'll have their primary business is their cafe, and then they'll start selling stationery in it.
Absolutely,
you did the opposite.
Absolutely.
You had your stationery.
Yes.
Yeah, and then started selling coffee.
We did, absolutely. And I mean, it was beautiful. Like, I love the process of creating that space. It was stunning, and it was the most beautiful cafe. And, the whole process of creating the idea and the concept and the branding and the experience and the ambience that was in there. And I think part of our mindset as well was we had all these beautiful printing presses. We wanted the public to see them. So we're like, well, if we have this amazing cafe and this big glass wall, it's almost like when you go to a roastery or a brewery and you go see, them making it behind glass. We're like, we'll do the similar type of idea.
Creating an experience.
Absolutely. And it was a beautiful experience, but, I felt like it was amazing for the consumers, but as the owners and operators, it was hell on many levels.
Was it just spreading yourself too thin?
It was way too thin, and we had little tiny babies. I think Elsie, that's our second born, she was literally like a week old, and I had her in there doing the fit out for the cafe, and it was just too much. It was way too much, and trying to run two businesses. So one's at hospitality where it's very instantaneous. Someone orders a coffee and they want it 2 minutes later. Versus back then we're still doing custom stationery, so we're working on like this 1 to 2 year time frame difference with clients. So it was too much, and there were two polar opposite businesses, and trying to manage both of those to run concurrently was just hectic. So
I would imagine too. Yeah, I was just going to say, I would imagine too that when you're starting your business, you're getting up and running, even though at this time you'd been doing it for years still.
Yeah.
But you're always still feeling like you're getting going.
Absolutely.
And I was just thinking, in some ways you have to be so singularly focused to make something like that happen to begin with, to be like perfecting your methods and sourcing your materials and just all those things that you have to think about to perfect your business. And then all of a sudden you're going to do it. All of a sudden now you're going to be a coffee guru. You know what I mean? How do you...
I do love coffee, don't get me wrong. Yes.
Oh, yeah. Many people do, but to make it all of a sudden, that's just as much of a focus as your press. It doesn't seem like there's room for it.
No, there wasn't room for it. And I feel like it was a really hard decision to let it go, because it was this beautiful baby we'd built, and it was such a beautiful experience, and people would love it, and people would travel to the Highlands just to come, and people were always giving us those comments and feedback, and it was stunning and beautiful, and everything about it was amazing. But just having to run it whilst also running our other business, plus having little children, plus my husband who's away all the time, it was just too much. Yeah. So we kind of got to the point where we're like, we are broken. We are so broken. So we ended up selling it. And I think in retrospect, it was probably the best thing we could have done, because then, as you said, it gave me the ability to come back and go, okay, well, this is my baby. Like, this is my first true love, Bespoke Letterpress, and I need to put all my energy back into it. And, what has it missed out on all these years? Because it kind of got a bit pushed to the side, I felt like, in that era. Mm-hmm. And then from that moment on, I felt like when I could then come back into Bespoke fully, and then obviously then we had the pandemic. So my husband being an airline pilot, he was not flying anywhere. So he was home for a very long extended period of time, which was hard because he didn't get the income, but, it gave us time and clarity and space for me then to go, okay, well, what is Bespoke, and how do I now put all my energy back into it, and how do I now want Bespoke to look and feel? And, I feel like it has grown and improved so much since that era, and just having that brain space back. I mean, then we've gone and had a couple more children in that mix, but I was able to get the best of Bespoke back, I think.
Did you
it's
feel
a much
like
stronger business now? Yeah.
Did you feel like, though, when you did have the coffee shop, did you feel like it helped the Bespoke Letterpress business at all, either by just bringing awareness to it? Like, was there any advantage to it, or was it all just an energy drain?
I think it definitely would have brought awareness. And I think that a lot of people would walk into the cafe and would even know that, we had a stationery shop and we had letterpress at the back. And, so it definitely would have built some awareness around the brand. But whether that awareness was worth the mental drain, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I guess
I'm not sure.
at
Yeah.
some point the return ends up being no, like it's benefiting you to a point, and then at some point it must drop off, and you're like, okay, well, at
Yes.
this point, I'm not doing what I should be
Yes.
doing.
Yeah. I mean, we definitely learned so much in that experience, and I don't regret it by any means, but I feel like it definitely has given me so much more clarity since then. And I think it also taught me as well that, I feel like I probably get lost on these tangents and I get these great ideas. I'm like, yeah, we can do that. As I said before, if something's hard, I'm all for it.
Hmm.
So I think it's probably taught me a little bit of a lesson to slow down and really think about it and be, okay, well, is this what my expertise is? And if it's not my expertise, then maybe I shouldn't be wasting my energy on it. And yeah, as
Yeah.
I said, the cafe is now owned by the most beautiful people who've, an absolute hospitality professionals. So they've taken it and they've grown it into something incredible and amazing. So yes, it,
Right.
it, it was definitely an era, but I feel like we're definitely in a better place now. And I feel like it's given me a lot more time now to focus on making amazing prints and designs and products and, the stuff that I really love. And that brings me joy. So,
Yeah, and so now, here you are, and you've got three locations, right? You've got the one in
yes.
Barwell, one
Yep.
in Sydney, and one in
hmm
Canberra.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. And hopefully one more, but I can't tell you where that is just yet. That's in
oh,
the
exciting!
pipelines. Yes.
Is it out of the state, out of New South Wales, or in
It
New
is,
South
it
Wales?
is out of New South Wales.
Oh, fantastic.
Yes.
Um, so did you start with the one store and then eventually, oh, I need to, we're expanding. Like, what was the second store? I'm guessing Barwell was the first one.
No, actually, so our store in Sydney was the first. So Strand Arcade was
Ah,
the first store. So I remember this, and this is probably back in that era when I was really busy. I think I had a little baby, and Strand Arcade had contacted us a couple of times about just doing a little pop up. And at the time, I was like, we've never opened a store. I don't have capacity. I can't even think about that. That just seems so hard. We don't have staff. Like I kept on just saying no, which is terrible in retrospect. But eventually, I think I was just like, okay, you know what? They keep on asking. Let's do this. So we popped up for Christmas. I think it was 2015 actually. We did a Christmas pop up there for a couple of weeks, and it was amazing. And I don't know if you know the Strand Arcade building, but it is
yeah.
stunning. It is absolutely so stunning.
Hmm.
So we did a pop up for Christmas, then we packed down, and I remember we were there on Christmas Eve, and my dad was there, and my husband was there, and we were packing down this shop at 2 o'clock in the morning on Christmas morning. It was hectic. Then we popped up again for Mother's Day, and then I think we just stayed. So, Australian Arcade loved having us there, and we loved being there, and we've just kind of been there ever since. So that was the first store. And then the next store would have been when we opened up the cafe, and that would have been our barrel store. So when we sold the cafe, and also timing, I feel like fate is such a big thing I believe in things happening when they're supposed to happen. So when we sold the cafe and we were just going to close up the barrel store and not have a store at all in our hometown, and then this perfect shop came up for lease, and I literally saw it one night, and the next day we'd signed the lease, and we ended up moving. Oh my goodness, I remember we moved. So Barrel is in a big town, but the main street, like the main strip, is probably, I don't know how many, 500 meters long, maybe. I'm not sure how long the main strip of town is, but it's got all stores either side. So the cafe was at one end and our new stores at the other end, and so we had to kind of dismantle this store from the cafe and wheel it up the middle of the main street and wheel the presses up up the main street
Wow.
into the new store, during the middle of the night, because you can't do it when there's traffic around. So we ended up getting our new Barrel store, which we've been in ever since, and it's a much better location and it's much better exposure and all around us much better. So then we've had Barrel. We opened the store in Canberra last year, and then each Christmas we've also done pop-ups in Chatswood Chase in Sydney as well. So a few different locations.
Very nice. And so the what were the initial net? I guess before Canberra, but you've been operating for a little bit at the capacity that you're at. What were like the initial sort of products that were your sort of your main focus? Was it the greeting cards, the stationery?
Yeah, definitely greeting cards. And I feel like that's kind of how it all kind of evolved, that I ended up moving from being a service-based business where I was, creating custom stationery for someone to being a product-based business, which is what we are now. Basically and this is back in the 2000s and I don't know what, 2008, 9, 10, that era. This is back when we were deep doing wedding stationery. And I remember I used to get beautiful retail stores who would contact me directly and be like, can you please just do cards? Like, can you please just make some stationery? Can you please make some greeting cards? We're importing all letterpress cards currently from the States because there was no one in Australia who was making letterpress cards. We'd really just love to have Australian made, but can you please do some? Please, please, please. I'm like, I don't want to make cards. Anyone can make cards. Making a card isn't hard. But I was like, okay, all right. They keep on asking and keep on asking. So I'm just going to say yes. So we did a very small collection of greeting cards, and that was kind of the beginning of the end. And from greeting cards, we kind of then started doing, actually, we bought out double-sided gift wrap, which that was kind of our next big product we did. And back then, I feel like so many people have now taken this idea and they do it as well. But back then, double-sided gift wrap did not exist at all. And I remember just thinking, you're printing on one side of the paper. Yeah, it costs more to print on the other side, but why don't you? Like, why keep the back of this paper blank? Put a beautiful design on it. And so then we came up with double-sided gift wrap, and it just went crazy, and people loved it. And as I said, every man and his dog now does double-sided gift wrap, but back then no one did. And so it kind of grew from then, and then we started doing more product-based things and notebooks and journals, and then planners and linens, and it's just grown ever since. From
That's
then,
so cool.
basically, yeah.
What would you say is the biggest seller out of all the products for you at the moment?
Gift wrap is always popular. Gift wrap always sells well. I don't know, it's a real mixed bag, and I feel like as our product offering has expanded, I feel like it's opened up our products to more different buyers as well. So I'd say most of our business is gift based. So it's people buying things as a gift, or buying it to give, or buying it to wrap and present in that gifting sector. So, but I feel like as time's gone on, potentially some of our products we've bought out have been a little bit more personal. So it's more people buying it for themselves as well.
Yeah. At what point did you? I imagine that, because I noticed you have a for the home section. And so that's got linens and napery. Is that a more recent addition to your product offerings?
It is. We started doing linens, probably about 2 to 3 years ago. We can't print on linen, so there's quite a few products that we can't manufacture ourselves. So those we outsource to amazing people who manufacture those for us. So the linens is one of those, because you can't print fabric on an old printing press. But yes, that was a couple of years ago. And I think part of me was like, we've got these stunning prints. And once I've created something that's such the most beautiful artwork, and I spend so much time creating this absolutely stunning design, and I'm an absolute perfectionist, so nothing ever happens quickly. By the time I've got this beautiful artwork at the end, and I've put it on a greeting card, and then I've taken bits and pieces and extract elements out and made a I put it on a gift wrap, and then I've extracted out elements, and I've made a complimentary greeting card that goes, but it's not the same, but still complements each other. And I kind of got to the point where I was like, I've got these stunning prints, and I'm like, I need to find ways in which people are going to want to keep them, So if they put it on a gift wrap, they give that out, or if they put it on a card, they give that to someone else. But, a tea towel is something which people put in their kitchen, and then they can admire it. And, they might still gift it, but it's also something that they can then continue to look at the beauty. So I think in my mindset, and this is also post-cafe when I started to then have more brain space to think about these things, I was like, well, what other things can I do where people actually get to admire this beauty that we've created, more so than just, wrap a present and then throw it in the recycling bin at the end of it. So that's kind of how the whole home section came about.
I guess that's something I didn't really think about, is a lot of the products are, for lack of a better term, are more temporary.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Which is funny, but because I tend to keep greeting cards.
Oh, you're a sentimentalist. What's that? Sentimentalist?
I tend. You can find a memory box of like cards that I got, for my mom for my birthday like 10 years ago, and
that's sweet though.
Yeah. So, but truly, especially when you're getting into calendars and things like that. I guess people do they'll discard them or recycle them.
Absolutely.
Or whatever it is after a while. So
Although
I could
a lot
see.
Of people,
go ahead.
A lot of people do tell me that they buy it and they love it so much they can't ever bring themselves to gift it to someone else. I'm like, oh, please just give it. Grab something, make it beautiful, put it out in the world.
How funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm just going through the different products here on your website. They're absolutely beautiful. Um,
Thank you.
I would love to get into a little bit of the actual design and that
Hmm.
whole process,
Sure.
because that's obviously where you cross paths with Milton and King, and we would get into
Yes.
the wallpapers and things like that.
Yes. Very excited
So,
about that.
yeah, we are too. It's been very, very well received. We just got back
Oh,
from
fabulous.
the is it ICFF
Uh-huh.
convention in New York,
Uh-huh.
and it was a big hit among a
Oh,
lot of the
fabulous.
interior designers and things that were coming by and checking out the booth. So
Amazing.
yeah,
Amazing.
so it went really well. But yeah, so just to give the listener a bit of background, so you worked with other artists in this. Was there a reason why you
Yes.
didn't just design these? I mean, you're a graphic designer, that you just didn't do these yourself, but you decided I want to work with these other artists.
Absolutely. And I feel like that's kind of something that's kind of just fused over the years in terms of my personal preference of creating things. And I think that originally back in the early days of Bespoke, and, I was designing everything and I was drawing everything from scratch and, I was completing everything. But as time went on, it's almost like you kind of get yourself into a bit of a aesthetic bubble, I suppose. So the
Mm-hmm.
things that I used to draw and create over time, they kind of all, in my mind, I mean, probably not to the consumer's mind, but in my critical mind, they all kind of started to look the same. And I guess I was just getting bored of what my own ability was, I suppose. So I
Mm-hmm.
think as time's gone on, and it's kind of, it was never something that I intentionally set out to do, but it's kind of just started and it's gone so well, and I absolutely love the process of working with other artists. It's kind of something that we've kind of fused into now. That's what we are almost. So a lot of the time I'll find an incredible artist who someone who I admire, or someone who, a lot of time it's on Instagram. I see their work,
Mm-hmm.
and then I will reach out to them. These days, we get a lot of surface pattern designers reach out to us. But I tend to go with the people who I find, only because I feel like I see an artist's work and it's just, my gut just talks to me straight away. And I see it. I'm like, this is our consumer and this is our market. And I can see the products and I get really excited about that process. So basically what I do is then once I start reaching out to the artists and, make sure we're a good fit together and we get along well. And I feel like some of these artists, I've become such great friends with them. And it's such this magical part of our process, and it's so personal. And although we've got Bespoke, which is this fairly decent sized company that I'm working directly with the artists. They don't work with any of our staff. It's really, really personal experience.
Mm-hmm.
And they feel like they almost become part of my family. It's so hard to explain. So basically, how my process normally is with an artist is generally I'll reach out to them and we'll get talking and we'll nut out ideas. And a lot of the time I leave it up to the artist because I want them to be creating elements that are true to them. So I don't want to be dictating or telling what we want. I want them to be creating what they love and what's true to them. So they'll create elements or illustrations or separate entities for us, which are commissioned and they're licensed. And then I take those entities and those parts and I then I call them clusters. I'm not sure what everyone else calls them, but I basically take individual elements that they've provided and I create these little scenes or little clusters together, and then I'll create more different clusters which are separate looks, but then I'll fuse them together and I'd kind of infill in that way. And so there's a lot of trust because an artist is giving me kind of their raw components and I'm then taking those and creating the final works. That's most
Ah,
majority of how I work with most of the artists. Some of them are slightly different, but that's the majority, and that's my preference in how I prefer to work because I feel like that's the part that I love. I love like being absolutely so lost in Photoshop and sitting here and 6 hours later I'm busting for a wee because I haven't moved. Because I'm so enthralled in creating these beautiful, beautiful patterns in Photoshop. So I really love the process. And I think over the years, I've kind of learned that that's where my real love is. And it's in that pattern making and creating these beautiful, beautiful scenes and artworks. And, I feel like part of me is like, I wish I could just churn work out. But the other part of me is like, I know that if I've ever done that, it's never gone very well. Whereas the work that I really put all my heart and soul into and I spend so long on it. And, that's the ones that always do the best. So
Yeah.
I have to trust my intuition there.
Yeah. Well, you said a few things that I find really, really interesting. One is, so you've mentioned that you are a perfectionist and you're self-critical.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you're so self-critical to the point to where you've sort of emptied yourself in a way, emptied your own ego to say, I'm having these other artists do this because of whatever the personal reasons are, or just your love of their art. I find that really interesting that you're sort of so critical and so critical of yourself that you decided to let, to seek out other artists, which I think is a wonderful quality, because it means that you're willing to kind of empty out your own ego for that. That somebody would have, as in their, you take pride and it's your company and it's your thing and your vision. So it's definitely a very interesting quality, because, a lot of times when people are creating their brand or whatever it is, they want to kind of put their stamps all over it, and you've sort of allowed yourself to be open to interpretation, for lack of a better term, that other artists are going to do their thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I find that very, very interesting and intriguing.
I think as well, one of the other things which I've really loved in the process, and was not something which was ever in my mind that this is what we're going to do or become, but as the process has gone on, we're working with, and there hasn't been that many artists we've worked with. Like I'm so particular, and as I said, it has to be like this instant fireworks when we start chatting, and I have to get that gut feeling that this is the right thing and this is the right person to work with. But one of the things that I love, and I feel like even though we're commissioning and we're licensing and they're getting paid for us to use their works, there's so much on-flow benefit that we give back to that artist. So I feel like I never hide away who we've used or who. It's exactly what Milton King does as well, which is why I love working with you guys. But it's like the credit always goes back to that artist. So even though the print that I'm using, even though I've created it and I've spent weeks and weeks and weeks perfecting it, at the end of the day, I've used a base illustration that artist has sat there and painted or created on screen. So I'm always saying that the credit is back to them, and I think that has then given a lot of on-flow effect for those artists. And I feel like some of those artists have gone on to insane, incredible, it's been huge exposure for them, which is not rubbing our own bell at all, but it's just how it's naturally panned out. But it's then opened up so many doors to those artists as well. So I feel like I really want to be able to use my platform to be able to grow someone else's business, I guess in the way that I probably would have appreciated back in my earlier days, that I was able to get that exposure through a lot of press coverage and stuff that we got back when I started, because, no one did letterpress and I was crazy. And, a lot of press found that very interesting. It's kind of old news now, but, to be able to give my platform over to another artist for them to then, launch their career off into a new trajectory that they hadn't maybe envisaged that was capable or possible for themselves. So, I think it's magical, like it's such a magical thing. And now I feel like because of that, I kind of don't want to make my own works that often. Because, I don't need to rag my own bell a little bit, like I'm an old designer now. I'm old and tired. I don't need to, have my feathers pumped up. But for someone young and upcoming, absolutely,
Yeah, no, I mean, Milton King does do a lot of the same thing, where we love to shine the light on the artists, and, and we love to see them thrive.
Absolutely. It's amazing.
It's one of the coolest things to see.
Yeah. So you guys get it. You get it, which is great. Yeah.
For sure. Are there any designs that are currently on the site that are still from one of your originally created designs?
On our website, I would have to go have a look. I don't know. There would be, but as for which ones, I'd have to go through and look at them. But it's not that often now. I feel like I so much more prefer the process of working with someone else's work. And I feel like it also means that every time I am working on a new print, it's fresh and it's new and it's exciting. Yeah. Whereas my own work, it's not exciting anymore.
Right. Well, I do understand where it does turn into a very sort of personal thing that you have with your artist, because you are, like you said, it's anytime you're doing a creative thing together, it does become a bit, it is personal, and I can see why you would see them as family almost, because
absolutely, yes,
there's something very soul bearing about the artistic process, and when you connect with somebody on that level, it's very special.
And I think as well for the artists. So as I'm working on prints, I always share my process with them, and I let them see what I'm creating. And as I'm coming up with product ideas, they see all the mock-ups, and so I share that whole experience with them. So I think that the feedback I always get from them is like they love that, because to be able to see their work through a different designer's eyes, and to see what I've created, which is maybe not what they would have created, but to see that end outcome and I guess in some ways I almost feel like it's maybe opened the doors a little bit for the artist to see that, even though you're an artist and even though you're a designer and you're probably just, one person sitting at home amongst your children, working on your own work, that your work is commercialized, and you can turn that into something, and you can turn that into career, and you can take a beautiful design you've made and, have it commercialized on multiple different products, and, then suddenly have your works, your art being sold through, hundreds of different stores and locations. And I feel like it's a real eye-opening experience for the artist as well.
You're mentoring them in that way.
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
And just so I understand, so on some of these designs, you said they're sending you the elements. So for example,
Yes.
they'll send you like a bird and then
Absolutely.
a tree
Yeah.
or whatever, and you're
Yeah.
sort of placing it and organizing it into the pattern?
Yes. And that's the bit I love. Yes.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
that's such a critical, crucial part of creating the pattern itself. So that's really neat. I didn't realize
Yeah.
that was the process.
Yeah, with most of the others, there's a couple in there in the wallpaper that they had done the repeat.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, most of them, it's what I put together, which, as I said, that's the bit I love.
Yeah,
Gives
so
me
cool.
chills when I'm working on prints.
Well, we're running out of time here, and I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I did want to kind of just jump through a couple of these wallpaper designs.
Sure.
Just to briefly mention the artist that you're working with. So you got
Yes.
Vivian.
Uh-huh.
Is it Hassan Clever?
Hassan Cleaver, yes. She's in Luxembourg, yes.
Okay. Where's she from?
Luxembourg.
Luxembourg. Okay.
Yes.
And she's done the ones that they look like the more bold colored
Yes.
prints, like sloth, parrot.
Yes.
And
So they are repeats that she has done. They're ones that I didn't do the repeats on those. We did the
Okay.
colorways, but she's done the repeats. So yeah, I really liked hers because I feel like it. I feel like when I create my work, I find it hard to be so structured and to get like hers has got a very distinct repeat in them. Whereas when I do my works, I tend to make the repeat a little bit more hidden, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But I really quite liked her work and working with her. She's gorgeous. Because I felt like it gave a little bit more of that structured repeat look, which completely suits her work. And I feel like even if I went in there and trying to change it to make it feel a bit more fluid, it would not be as good.
Yeah. Well, the sloths
Yeah.
are adorable.
Oh, they're so cute, aren't they?
I mean,
Yeah.
anybody that looks at them just has that. Aw.
It's so cute. We've actually just done a greeting card with the sloths, and we've printed them in gold foil, and they are adorable.
Oh, I bet. I'd love
Yeah.
to see that.
Yeah.
And then you work with Nancy North. Is that how you
Yes,
say it?
Nancy. Yes, I've worked with Nancy for quite a few years. So we started our first collection. We did, goodness me, now I can't remember what year it was. Was it 2019 or 2020? We did a Christmas collection together, and I love Nancy. She is just the most beautiful human on the earth. We've ended up doing a lot of stuff together since, because we just had this really beautiful flow, and I feel like she would draw me individual elements, and then she'd just put all her faith in me to take those elements and make these beautiful designs from them. So it's been a really gorgeous fusion of working with Nancy. I really, really love working with her.
Okay. And she has done the bespoke flamingos, and
Yes.
it looks like, is it the herons and the prima
Yes.
ballerina crane?
Yes, lots of birds and tropicals. Yeah.
Yeah. And so is
Yeah.
that in sort of keeping with her style? Like, did you see some
Absolutely.
of these elements when you discovered her?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was all her birds and her flowers. And as I kind of said before, it's almost like when I see an artist and I see what their core is, so what they love to produce, I kind of don't want to go to them and say, you make amazing birds, now draw me an elephant. Like I feel like
Yeah.
I always want to go back to what is their thing that they love. Give me what you love and let me turn into something that we can love together.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you have Hoglet and Co.
Yes, Serena. So she's based in the UK, and Serena, she's also the most beautiful human on the earth. We've worked together for years and years and years together. She's adorable, and once again, I just feel like she has absolute faith in what we do with her, and I feel like she provides elements, and it just lets us optimists go in these crazy fairylands of ideas of her work, and yeah. We've made some beautiful stuff together. I really love working with Serena. She's gorgeous. I'd love to meet her in person.
Yeah, you haven't met her in person. Is it
No,
all
she's
just
in the
over the?
UK. It's all just, yeah. In fact, I don't even think we've even had like a Skype video or anything together. I feel like it's all just been online. But yeah,
So weird how that
I
works.
love her. It's so weird. Yeah. But the time difference makes, as you know, makes things tricky. And yeah,
Oh yeah, definitely from
yeah,
Australia to the UK.
yeah, yeah,
It's polar opposites almost, it
yeah,
seems like.
yeah, yeah.
How funny. The Peacock has been getting a lot of good reaction.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, people see that and immediately are are taken back by
It's beautiful, isn't it?
beauty of that design. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah.
I know it's probably like picking which child you like best, but are there any sort of like standouts that you just
I
or
love them
stories
all.
behind any of these that are just
I think there's stories behind them all. I don't know, they all feel like babies. I think probably the one which I've gravitated to the most is the Prima Ballerina one, which is Nancy North print.
very classic looking?
It is so beautiful. And I feel like a lot of the time, my designs and what I design is very kind of subdued and calm and tranquil. And I feel like probably because I live in such this hectic family life and, business life is so busy, I feel like if I surround myself with things, I need those things to calm me down rather than ramp me up. Um, so I feel like I love the Prima Ballerina one in the fog and the duck egg blue. Those two colors are probably my two favorite, but
I
it's
noticed
just beautiful.
that design has a bit more space in it than some of the other
Yes, it
ones.
does. It does. And it's a bit, for me, it's quite repetitive, whereas you can kind of directly see where the repeat lands, but I really like it. And I think I'm going to probably wallpaper my daughter's bedroom in it because I think it's so pretty.
Oh, we have to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that I can see the way that that's spaced is yeah, it's but I suppose the use of space, empty space is just as important as the elements in
Absolutely.
it, you
Absolutely.
know.
And I think especially when those background colors are so beautiful, it gives them space to shine.
Yeah, absolutely. What's next for you? What do you have coming up?
Oh, it's been busy, Chris. I've been flat out so for us, stationary Christmas period is our biggest period time of the year. It's almost like we work for, 90% of the year for the 10% of the end of the year where it's Christmas and everything sells like crazy.
Yeah.
So working on Christmas, working at an incredible American-based artist for our Christmas range this year. I can't tell you who it is yet, but she's
Okay.
amazing. So we're working on that at the moment. That's all kind of in print at the moment, which is exciting. New store, which we're hoping opening later this year. Lots of new different product directions I think we're trying to head at the moment. I feel like we've
Oh,
kind of got
interesting.
our bread and butter core products that we produce, but I don't know, I feel like coming up with something new is kind of what excites me. So I feel like I kind of don't want to always do the same formulas over and over again. So coming up with new products. But then we've got we've got so many products on our website, and our warehouse is like we've got two warehouses now because they're overflowing. It's so big a stock. But yes, trying to tame in my ideas can be a challenge.
Do you primarily source everything and do everything in Australia, or do you have to?
It depends. It's hard. Manufacturing is hard in Australia. So the things that we can't print ourselves, I try and get them printed in Australia where I can. But that being said, not everything is possible to manufacture in Australia just because we don't have the manufacturing, capacity in Australia, sadly. And I feel like we're so isolated from the rest of the world that there's so many things that you just can't do here. So some things we do have to get made overseas, and it helps keep the margins achievable as well. I think that although margins on everything in the last couple of years have skyrocketed, which makes everything hard.
Yeah.
But it's that's kind of balance, and I feel like there's a balance between the works which we print or the works we have printed for us here in Sydney or the works that we need to get printed overseas, and it kind of can then cross balance to make the margins overall into something that still keeps us afloat, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's kind of you have to lose a little bit on the stuff you own make to win on the stuff that you don't make to try and make this, crazy business actually work
Yeah.
and continue.
Well, it's all very exciting, and I'm definitely interested in hearing all about what's coming up in terms of the new product lines
Oh,
and
thank you.
new artists. And yeah, it sounds like
Thank
there's a
you.
lot happening, as if you weren't busy enough. Um,
I'm so excited we finally got wallpaper though. So excited. I feel like it's been something that we've been wanting to do for so many years, so many years. And so many people would come to us and say, can you please just make wallpaper? Like this print is beautiful, just put it on a wall.
yeah,
So thrilled. I mean, I know that it's been a long process with working in Milton Kin because it's took us so long to get the works together and everything happening. But, I'm absolutely chuffed, and I couldn't ask for a better partnership to be creating our wallpaper for us. So
Yeah,
absolutely thrilled.
we got there eventually, and no, it's great, and I'm sure now that people are getting their samples and things, and more people are hearing about it, you'll definitely start seeing some photos rolling
Oh, I'm so excited.
of
So
their homes with
excited.
these designs all over. So yeah, very, very exciting.
Very exciting. Super excited for us.
Well, amazing. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule to talk with me for a bit.
Oh, you're welcome. It was lovely to chat.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting hearing all about, just the whole start of the letterpress and everything. It's such a fascinating history, and it's so cool that you've revived all of that and grown it into what you have now, and just
you.
all the sort of turns and stuff, twists and turns
Yeah.
that you've had in getting going. I think it's inspirational for
Oh, thank you.
other people starting their businesses.
A lot of hard work.
Yeah.
A lot of hard work. Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully we'll get a chance to connect again soon.
Wonderful. Thanks, Chris. It's been fun.